All right, great question here from Ryan. Ryan says, how to analyze your own games or strokes and identify a problem. I've been working on my flat serve for weeks, and I consistently hit the tape. I don't know what to adjust or what to look for that would cause this. I totally know what you're talking about, Ryan. It can feel like you're totally lost on something like that, where you keep making the same mistake and you like try turning different knobs and dials to try to figure it out, and you're just not quite figuring it out. It's super frustrating. Another way to explore the idea, what different mistakes lead to what outcomes? For example, what are the most common / expected outcomes, or where does the ball end up if your serve toss is too far back, too low, too far out to the side? Same for forehand, backhand, volleys, etc. So I'm actually going to give you the solution, Ryan, to all tennis shots. This is the magical phrase. It can help you explain or get to the solution of just about anything in tennis. The face sends it, the path bends it. What that means is that wherever the strings are facing at contact, that's the direction the ball is going to travel. And the ball, by the way, is only on the strings for about 4/1000ths of a second. Tiny, tiny, tiny split second. It's like a fraction of the blink of an eye. The ball is on the strings. Wherever your strings are facing, that's the direction the ball is going to go. Meanwhile, the path the racket is traveling, at that instant, the ball touches the strings, that gives the ball spin or curve. And so it's combining those two that we can actually work our way back and figure out, okay, what do I adjust here? So let me show you an example here from a video that I made a while ago. And in this example, Kevin Garlington from Total Tennis Domination hit a bunch of serves, the same type of serve. It was a flat serve each time. I asked him, hey, Kevin, do me a favor and hit the baseline with a serve while I recorded it. I asked him to hit the bottom of the net with a serve. And now this is the difference in racket face angle between hitting the baseline, so 18 feet long, and hitting the bottom of the net, not even close to over the net. So you're talking about hitting the tape over and over and over again. The difference between hitting the baseline and hitting the bottom of the net, so we're talking about like a 40-foot difference in how far the ball travels, 19 degrees of difference in the angle. So just listen to this really quickly as I explain it in the video. That means the difference in racket face angle between hitting the bottom of the net and missing your serve 18 feet long on the other side of the baseline is only 19 degrees. For every 1 degree of angle that your racket face is off at contact, you're missing your target by over 2 feet. Just let that sink in for a second. So you're talking about like hitting the tape. So we're talking about differences in racket face angle of fractions of 1 degree. The difference between hitting the tape and then missing the tape by whatever, a couple inches, 2 or 3 inches, right? Just listen to just a little bit more of this, just for context here. Diving another layer deeper reveals some incredible stats. We shot these videos at 240 frames per second, which means each individual frame of movement represents 4/1000ths of a second in real time. That's just 4 milliseconds. There are just 2 frames of movement in Kevin's swing between his racket face being at a 105-degree angle before contact and 86 degrees at contact when he hit the bottom of the net. So the timing difference between hitting the bottom of the net and hitting the baseline on the other side of the court 39 feet away is only 8/1000ths of a second. So hopefully your mind should be exploding right now. 8/1000ths of a second is the difference between hitting the baseline on the other side of the court and the bottom of the net. So what are we talking about when we're talking about hitting the net tape and then hitting the net tape and then hitting the net tape? Well, first of all, congratulations, like that's unbelievably precise to be able to hit the same like couple inches again and again and again. You know, obviously you're not hitting the tape like 5 or 6 times in a row, but it feels like that, right? When we kind of repetitively, you know, whatever, 2 or 3 times out of 10 we hit the tape, it feels like that's kind of all we're doing is hitting the tape. The reality is a tiny, tiny adjustment in the angle of your racket is going to send the ball someplace completely different. So notice the differences here in Kevin's racket. His racket here is more closed. It's facing a little bit more down. And his racket here is a little bit more open. It's facing a little bit more up. That's it. Like, that's the difference. Now, how do we change that? Well, toss location has a lot to do with it. If you toss the ball a couple inches further in front, your racket kind of has to keep moving to get there, and that usually tends to close the racket face a little bit more. So you can experiment with tossing a little bit further back or a little bit further in front. For you, since you keep hitting the tape, we need the ball to travel a little further, which means we need the face a little bit more open, which means I'd recommend you try tossing back a little bit further. Your racket face, in this particular example, is a little bit too closed. I'm constantly thinking about, as a coach, as a teacher, because students come to me with all kinds of different problems, but it all comes back to this. And there's different reasons why our face might be a little too open or a little too closed, or the path is a little bit too flat or a little bit too vertical or a little bit too out to the side, or whatever it is. Like it's more complicated than this. I'm just trying to simplify it so that so everybody watching can apply this to all tennis shots, and like every shot in tennis comes back to these two variables. And then from there you can kind of play a little bit of detective and ask yourself the question, okay, so why would that be happening? Why would my racket face be a little bit open? Why would my racket face be a little bit closed? So on and so forth. So here's the questions you want to ask yourself. Did the ball go directly to a bad place, like wide or net or deep? And if the answer to that is yes, then the racket face at contact is off. It's facing the wrong way. And usually that has to do with timing or contact point, just like we talked about with your serve. So the other question you could add, it's gonna generally fall into two kind of big buckets. And I'm generalizing here. This is kind of all of the things being equal, kind of advice. There are different combinations of the many other different variables at play that could cause these things to not be 100% accurate all the time. But this is a catch-all that covers the vast majority of situations, okay? I'm just saying that for all the technique nerds out there who are going to be like, "Nuh-uh, what about, like XYZ?" This is a broad generalization, just to help people start to think critically and start to reverse engineer some of this stuff to get a little bit more understanding. So if the ball goes directly to a bad place, your racket face at contact was off. Did the ball go generally kind of, basically in the direction you were aiming, but just missed by a little bit deep or into the net? Well, if that's the case, more than likely your swing path is a little bit too straight, and so your shot is traveling like too straight, too flat. There's no margin. We need a little bit more shape to give us a little bit of breathing room. Otherwise, we're going to keep missing a little bit long and then a little bit short, and then a little bit long and a little bit short. That is a symptom of your shot being too direct, and we don't have any curve to give us a little bit of margin, a little bit of breathing room to be able to have a little bit of wiggle room, to work with. I think that's all the synonyms I know for that. Margin, breathing room, wiggle room. There you go. We need a little bit of space to work with. Otherwise, man, hitting a ball in the court over and over it's hard, man. I mean, we have to be so precise, and hopefully just that quick snippet of that video really kind of illustrates that for you. So this is how I recommend you think about it for all shots in tennis. I also gave you the specific answer for your specific issue of hitting the tape. So hopefully that's super helpful.